This is a production of Cornell University.
Thank you for that warm welcome. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I really want to thank Cornell University for helping bring all of us together for this really important conversation. I really have 4 points I want to make in talking about healthy soil. From the American Farmland Trust perspective, healthy soil is a private asset with public benefit. So healthy soil is vital to farm productivity, the resilience of farmers to severe weather, but there are tremendous public benefits that we've heard from many of our speakers this morning that come from healthy soil. Certainly connected to our ability to grow food, our ability to have clean water, and our ability to have a healthy climate to exist in. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think when we talk about healthy soil, we need to think about that holistically. And from the American Farmland Trust perspective, the foundation of that conversation is to keep our most productive, versatile, and resilient soil in farming, i.e., don't pave it over, don't cover it with concrete. And this is not an inconsequential issue for the state of New York, that we have paved over the equivalent of 5,000 farms since the early 1980s. So the foundation of a conversation about healthy soil is to protect that land and keep it in farming to start. And then you can complement that with discussion that many of you have focused on today about the stewardship of that land. And those two things coming together is really the foundation of a holistic conversation about healthy soil. I think there's some valuable lessons that we can learn from the state of California on this approach. The state of California in 2015 began allocating funding from their carbon market towards the development of a strategic agricultural land conservation program. They have subsequently allocated $70 million towards permanently protecting farmland as a way of reducing transportation-related emissions. In essence, if we keep people living in cities more compactly, we're going to reduce transportation emissions. And then they've also invested their carbon proceeds in healthy soils programs that invest in research and technical assistance to farmers with the stewardship of that land. And I think there's some really valuable lessons that we can learn from California. Last year, the American Farmland Trust released research report called Greener Fields. This is a report that was largely based on data that had been gathered by the Department of Environmental Conservation, looked at greenhouse gas emissions from agricultural land compared to developed land in New York. And we found that the average acre of farmland in New York emitted 66 times fewer greenhouse gas emissions than an acre of developed land. And that if we could reduce our emission, or the amount of farmland that we pave over by 80% by 2050, it could have the equivalent effect of taking 1 million cars off the road in New York. Who wouldn't want to see 1 million cars off the road in New York? So we think that there's some valuable lessons that we can, as a community and as a state, think about for agricultural land as we're thinking about our state's climate strategy, and that we absolutely should have a really robust agricultural lands component of our climate agenda. So that's point number two. Point number three, it was great to go after Don and Dave and John Paul, because I think one of the lessons that I really took away from that is how they are adapting and learning and applying some common practices, but they have to be customized to their situation. And they need to be customized because of the crops they're producing, the landscape in which they're producing. Also, management capacity is very much an integral part of the conversation. So we've been really excited over the last several years. The American Farmland Trust has worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension and Soil and Water Districts and others to host more than a dozen on-farm demonstrations in Long Island and Western New York, as well as 5 soil health field days. We have our next soil health field day on Long Island coming up, Debbie, August 16th. We think that those types of on-farm, in-field, really applied conversations are really critical to catalyzing this soil health movement in New York. And to build on that, we are very excited. A few weeks ago, we announced a new program with Cornell University, with NRCS, with the Department of Agriculture and Markets and others, a program called the Practical Soil Health Specialists of New York. It is a professional development program that is going to occur over the next 2 years. And we are looking to develop a network of 20 practical soil health specialists. These are people in the public sector or the private sector that really want to provide training and technical assistance to farmers in using soil health practices successfully. So it's a very field-based training program. Applications for that program are due Friday. So if you are interested, we've had a tremendous response already, but it is an exciting program. There are flyers in the back, and let's see, Jeff tonight, where are you, Jeff? Jeff's got his hand raised in the back. If you want to learn more about that program, talk to Jeff or to Aaron Ristow at Cornell. The last point I'm going to make is that when we talk about soil health, we need to think about healthy soil, not just on farmer-owned farmland, but on the land that farmers rent as well. Because about 20% of our land in New York is rented land. And often that can be the most challenging land to get conservation practices adopted on. Because landowners are increasingly removed from the farm and may not know as much about production practices. And farmers may not feel like they have the economic security to really invest in these practices that have a longer return life. So we are really excited to be working with Cornell Cooperative Extension out in Wyoming County and other partners to pilot some trainings, technical assistance, and communications activities targeted towards women landowners, as well as farmers in the Genesee River watershed. And we've been doing that for the last 2 years, experimenting with some different approaches. Over the next year, we're going to be sharing our results and what we're learning. But really think that that is an important part of this conversation that's often overlooked, because it's not just the farmer-owned land. That rental land is a really important piece of this conversation as well. So I just want to close that this is a really important conversation. And it's not a conversation, though, just for farmers. It's with farmers, but really this is a conversation for all New Yorkers. Because, you know, for all of us eaters, all of us that are thinking about the water we want to drink or the water we want to swim in, and the health of our climate, that this is a conversation that's relevant to all New Yorkers. So thank you very much.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.